I am Natalie, a 32-year-old financial analyst from Chicago who just got the promotion I spent 3 years earning. When my mom invited me to a small family dinner, I never expected to walk into our house and find 88 people gathered around a banner reading, "Welcome, baby Emily." My mother laughed at my shocked expression and casually said, "We spent your bonus on family joy." I stayed quiet and replied, "Noted." Before I continue with what happened next, let me know where you're watching from in the comments and hit that subscribe button if you want to hear how I handled this family betrayal. Growing up in suburban Minnesota, I never had what most would consider a normal childhood when it came to finances. My parents, Karen and Thomas, were loving in many ways, but had a problematic relationship with money that affected our entire family. Dad worked as a high school teacher, while Mom jumped between part-time retail jobs, never quite finding her footing in a career. Their paychecks disappeared almost as quickly as they arrived, spent on impulsive purchases, unnecessary home renovations, and what they called making memories through expensive outings we could not afford. By the time I was 10, I understood the anxiety of watching bill collectors call our home. I learned to dread the sound of the phone ringing in the evening hours. My little sister Emily, 4 years younger than me, remained blissfully unaware of these stresses. My parents shielded her from financial realities while paradoxically involving me in adult conversations about money problems. "Natalie understands these things," my father would say proudly when I would help calculate which bills could wait another month. This financial instability shaped my approach to life. While Emily grew up carefree and socially confident, I became cautious and academically focused. I worked part-time jobs from age 16, saving nearly every dollar. When college application time arrived, I strategically applied for scholarships and financial aid, knowing my parents had saved nothing for my education despite years of promises. The boundary issues extended beyond money. My mother read my diaries throughout middle school, claiming she needed to know what was happening in my life. My father would volunteer me for family obligations without asking, insisting that family comes first whenever I protested. My space time and eventually my financial resources became community property in their eyes, while Emily remained protected from these expectations. Through determination and countless all-nighters, I graduated from the University of Minnesota with a finance degree, carrying only minimal student loan debt, thanks to my scholarships and campus jobs. I turned down a position near my hometown, instead accepting an entry-level analyst role in Chicago at Fraser Investment Management. The distance was deliberate, a buffer I created to establish independence. For 3 years, I worked 70-hour weeks, taking on extra projects and skipping holidays to prove myself. My tiny studio apartment was all I could afford, but it was mine free from financial entanglements with my family. I called home weekly, visited for major holidays, and sent gifts for birthdays and Christmas. From the outside, we looked like a normal, functional family, but I maintained careful boundaries, especially around money. My promotion to senior analyst came after I successfully led a complex portfolio restructuring that saved a major client millions. The $15,600 bonus represented more than just professional recognition. It was my first real financial cushion money I planned to use for a down payment on a small condo. 6 months before my promotion, my father had experienced a health scare, a minor heart attack that required surgery. During this crisis, my mother had been overwhelmed with managing insurance forms and hospital bills. In a moment of compassion, I had given her temporary access to my checking account to help her manage some immediate expenses. While I coordinated with the hospital from Chicago, I had transferred $5,000 to help with costs not covered by insurance, with the clear understanding this was a one-time assistance. After my father recovered, I had asked them repeatedly to remove themselves from my account, sending step-by-step instructions and even offering to help them do it over video chat. Each time they had reasons for delay, the bank needs a form we cannot find. The website was down when we tried. We will do it next week when things are less hectic. Eventually, my reminders became less frequent as work consumed my attention, and I mentally added it to my to-do list for after the big client project. Last month, my sister Emily had announced her pregnancy during a family video call. At 28, she had been married to her husband James for 3 years, and this baby would be the first grandchild in our family. My parents erupted with joy, talking about nursery themes and family traditions before Emily had even finished sharing her news. I was happy for my sister truly, but their excessive enthusiasm highlighted the different standards we had always lived under. When I had shared my upcoming promotion, their congratulations had been perfunctored, followed quickly by questions about when I might settle down like my sister. 2 weeks after my promotion was finalized and the bonus deposited, my mother called to invite me to what she described as a small family dinner to celebrate some good news. I assumed it related to Emily's pregnancy, perhaps finding out the gender of the baby. With my new position, slightly more flexible than before, I booked a weekend flight to Minnesota, expecting to join 10 or 15 family members for a casual gathering. Nothing fancy, my mother had insisted. Just immediate family and a few close relatives. No need to dress up. That should have been my first warning sign. In my family, not fancy had always been code for extravagant plans they did not want me to question in advance. The first sign that something was wrong came when my taxi turned onto my parents' street. Cars lined both sides of the normally quiet suburban road, forcing us to stop nearly a block away. As I paid the driver and retrieved my weekend bag, I noticed balloons tied to the mailbox, and a professionally printed banner hanging across the garage door reading, "Baby shower parking this way with pink and blue arrows." My stomach tightened as I walked toward the house, counting at least 30 vehicles. This was clearly not the intimate family dinner I had been promised. I checked my phone, wondering if there had been some miscommunication, but my mother's text from that morning simply said, "Excited to see you tonight, dinner at 6. As I approached the front door, I could hear music and laughter from inside. Colorful streamers hung from the porch ceiling, and a chalkboard sign welcomed guests to Emily's baby celebration. Taking a deep breath, I knocked, then immediately questioned why I was knocking at my parents' house like a stranger. The door swung open to reveal my cousin Amber, whom I had not seen in at least 2 years. She squealed with delight and pulled me into an unexpected hug. "The aunt of honor is here," she announced to the crowded entryway. Suddenly, I was surrounded by faces, some familiar and others barely recognizable. Distant relatives, family, friends, and people I had never met reached out to touch my arms and shoulders, congratulating me on becoming an aunt, as if I had accomplished something remarkable. I forced a smile while internally calculating how quickly I could find my parents for an explanation. The living room and dining room had been transformed with elaborate decorations. A professional photographer snapped pictures in front of a custom backdrop featuring a sleeping cartoon baby. A dessert table stretched along one wall, displaying cupcakes, cookies, and cake pops in pastel colors. Gift bags lined another table with "Thank you for celebrating with us" tags. The kitchen island was covered with catered food and warming trays. Nothing like the home-cooked meal I had expected. I spotted my father near the backyard door, holding court with several men I recognized as his brothers and golf buddies. He waved enthusiastically when he saw me, but made no move to approach. My sister Emily sat in a decorated chair in the center of the living room, a mommy-to-be sash across her chest, looking radiant and completely at ease with the attention. Finally, I found my mother directing a young woman who appeared to be a hired server. She brightened when she saw me and hurried over with outstretched arms. "Natalie, you made it. Isn't this wonderful?" She gestured around at the crowded room. "Everyone is so excited about the baby." "Mom," I said quietly, trying to keep the edge from my voice. "You told me this was a small family dinner. There must be almost 100 people here." She laughed dismissively. "Oh, it started that way, but you know how these things grow. Once we started planning, we realized we couldn't leave anyone out. The final count is 88 guests. Can you believe it?" I looked around at the professional setup. "This looks like it cost a fortune. How did you afford all this?" My mother's smile didn't falter as she looped her arm through mine and led me toward a quieter corner. "Well, that's part of the wonderful timing. Your bonus came through just when we needed it. Your father and I are so proud of your success. And what better way to use that money than bringing joy to the whole family?" The room seemed to tilt as her words registered. "My bonus? What are you talking about?" "The $15,600 from your promotion, sweetie. It was perfect timing. We were able to get the top baby shower planner in the Twin Cities. Everyone is talking about how beautiful everything is." My voice dropped to a whisper. You spent my entire bonus on this party without asking me. She patted my hand, not just the party. We also put a deposit on a crib and changing table set for Emily, and we're covering the professional maternity photo shoot next month. Family comes first, Natalie. You always have your career to focus on, but this baby is a once-in-a-lifetime celebration for all of us. Before I could respond, my father appeared beside us, giving me a side hug. There's my successful daughter making the family proud and helping us throw the best party this neighborhood has seen in years. Dad, did you authorize taking money from my account for this? I asked, struggling to keep my voice steady. He waved his hand dismissively. Your mother handled the details, but we knew you'd want to contribute. You can always earn more money with that fancy job of yours, but family moments like this are priceless. As if on cue, the crowd's attention shifted as Emily opened a large gift, exclaiming over a high-end stroller that I immediately recognized from the baby store website I had browsed when selecting my own gift for her, a sensible contribution to her baby fund. The stroller cost over $1,000, and based on the tag my mother was now proudly displaying to the guests, it had been purchased with love from Grandma and Grandpa. With my money, I stood frozen, trying to process what was happening. The noise of the party faded as I calculated the expenses surrounding me. The professional photographer alone would cost hundreds. The custom desserts, catered food decorations, party favors, and expensive gifts added up to thousands more. My entire bonus meant to secure my financial future had been spent without my knowledge or consent on a single afternoon of celebration. Emily caught my eye from across the room and waved me over enthusiastically, completely unaware of the conversation I had just had with our parents. She was 7 months pregnant and glowing, her happiness evident as she patted the seat beside her. I moved toward her automatically, my mind still reeling. I'm so glad you made it, she said, hugging me, awkwardly around her belly. Isn't this amazing? Mom and Dad went all out. I nodded, not trusting myself to speak without revealing my distress. Emily continued chattering about the gifts and decorations, oblivious to my internal struggle. As I sat beside her, outwardly smiling while photographed by the professional photographer my money had hired, I made a decision. I would observe and document everything today. I would calculate exactly how much had been taken and how it had been spent, and then I would ensure it never happened again. Noted, I whispered to myself, echoing my earlier response to my mother. The word now carried the weight of a promise. The next 2 hours passed in a blur of forced socialization and internal fury. I was seated at the main table with Emily, and our parents expected to participate in elaborate baby shower games that had clearly been planned by a professional party coordinator. We played Guess the Baby Food, where blindfolded guests tasted jarred baby foods and tried to identify them. Next came Baby Bingo with custom-printed cards featuring Emily's preferred baby items. The prizes for winners were monogrammed candles and bath sets that I estimated cost at least $30 each. Throughout the activities, I quietly observed and mentally tallied expenses. The custom-printed napkins with Welcome Baby Jackson or Charlotte in silver foil. The professional flower arrangements on every table. The signature mocktail station with a hired bartender mixing non-alcoholic drinks. Each element represented dollars drained from my account without my consent. During a lull in the festivities, I excused myself to use the restroom and instead slipped into my father's home office. I quickly checked my bank account on my phone, confirming my suspicions. A series of large withdrawals had depleted almost the entire bonus amount over the past 10 days. The most recent transaction had been just yesterday, probably for last-minute party additions. When I returned to the living room, a group of women I barely recognized were clustered around my mother, exclaiming over photo albums. As I approached, I realized they were looking at newly printed photographs of Emily's nursery, complete with high-end furniture and custom wall treatments. The designer finished installing everything yesterday, my mother was saying proudly. We wanted to have it ready well before the baby comes. The glider alone took 8 weeks to arrive. One of the women, an older family friend, noticed me hovering at the edge of the group. Natalie, your mother was just telling us how you contributed to making your sister's nursery so beautiful. Such a generous aunt already. My mother beamed at me. Natalie's success has been such a blessing to our family. The timing of her bonus couldn't have been more perfect for getting everything ready for the baby. Something inside me snapped. May I speak with you in the kitchen, Mom? I asked, my voice tight. In the relative privacy of the kitchen, I confronted her directly. You had no right to use my money for any of this. That bonus was my money that I earned. Do you have any idea how many hours I worked for that? My mother's expression hardened slightly. Family supports family. Natalie, your sister needs these things for her baby: a $1,000 stroller, a professional party planner, custom furniture. None of those are needs, Mom. And even if they were, it wasn't your decision to make with my money. You've always been so selfish with your success, she said, her voice dropping to avoid being overheard by nearby guests. Always keeping track of dollars and cents instead of focusing on what matters. This baby is bringing our family together, and you're worried about your bank account because it's my bank account. Money I earned and saved for my future. My father appeared in the doorway, his expression concerned as he took in our tense posture. Everything okay in here? People are starting to notice you two missing from the celebration. Did you know about all the money she took from my account? I asked him directly. He hesitated just long enough to confirm he was fully aware. Your mother handled the arrangements, but we discussed how to make this special for Emily. She's starting a family, Natalie. That's what really matters in life. So, my life, my work, my goals don't matter just because I'm not having a baby right now. Of course they matter, my mother interjected. But your career is already established. You make good money and will earn more bonuses. Emily and James are just starting out. James makes 6 figures as an engineer, I countered. They're not struggling newlyweds who need financial rescue. The kitchen door swung open as Emily waddled in her face, flushed with excitement, until she registered the tension in the room. What's going on? They're about to start the diaper raffle drawing. My mother quickly composed her features. Nothing to worry about, sweetie. Natalie and I were just having a little disagreement about some family finances. Emily looked between us. What finances? I met her eyes directly. Mom and Dad spent my entire promotion bonus, over $15,000, on this baby shower and nursery furniture without asking me. Her eyes widened. What I thought, she turned to our parents. You told me you had been saving for this. We had been, my father said smoothly. But Natalie's bonus helped us make everything extra special. It's what family does. Emily looked uncomfortable for the first time. I had no idea, Natalie. If I had known. It's not your fault, I said quickly. You didn't know. Still, my mother cut in. Natalie is making this into a bigger issue than it needs to be. The money is spent now, and look at all the joy it has brought. 77 of our closest friends and family gathered to celebrate your baby. 88 people, I corrected coldly. You invited 88 people to spend my money. My father stepped closer, lowering his voice. That's enough, Natalie. You're being dramatic and selfish. We raised you better than this. You raised me to watch bill collectors call our house and to count coins for grocery money while you made impulsive purchases, I replied. And now you've stolen from me to maintain appearances. That's not family. That's financial abuse. The kitchen fell silent at my words. Emily's eyes filled with tears. Whether from hormones or genuine distress, I couldn't tell. My mother's face flushed with anger, and my father's jaw tightened in the way it always did before he shut down a conversation. I think you should take some time to cool off, he said eventually. Maybe go upstairs until you can rejoin the party with a better attitude. I laughed incredulously. I'm 32 years old, Dad. You can't send me to my room, and I won't pretend to be happy about having my money stolen. Not even for appearances. Lower your voice, my mother hissed. The guests will hear you. Maybe they should hear me, I replied, though I didn't raise my voice. Maybe they should know this elaborate party was funded by theft. Emily placed her hand on my arm. Please, Natalie, this is supposed to be a happy day. We can figure this out later. I looked at my sister at the genuine confusion and distress on her face and felt my anger deflate slightly. This wasn't her fault. She hadn't known about the source of the funding for her shower. You're right, I said after a moment. This is your day and I won't ruin it. But this conversation isn't over, I added, looking directly at my parents. The rest of the afternoon passed in a blur of strained smiles and mechanical participation. I went through the motions of the remaining shower activities, helping Emily collect her mountain of gifts and thanking guests as they departed. With each passing minute, my determination grew. This would be the last time my parents leveraged my resources without consent. By 6, as the final guests were leaving, I had made my decision. I approached my parents in the debris-filled living room where they were counting gift cards and creating a list of thank you notes for Emily. "I'm heading back to my hotel," I said calmly. "I have an early flight tomorrow morning." "You're not staying here tonight?" my mother asked, surprise evident in her voice. We had always stayed in our childhood bedrooms during visits home. "No," I replied simply. "I need some space to think." My father frowned. "You're still upset about the money after such a wonderful day?" "Yes, I'm still upset about having over $15,000 stolen from me," I confirmed. "That doesn't change because you threw a nice party with it." "Nothing was stolen," my mother insisted. "We had access to that account for emergencies. This wasn't an emergency. This was a choice you made with my money without my knowledge or consent. And I'll be dealing with it when I get back to Chicago." I hugged Emily, goodbye, whispering that I would call her tomorrow, then left without further discussion. As I waited for my rideshare at the end of the driveway, I could see my parents, through the front window, already dismissing my concerns as they returned to cataloging the day's success. They had no idea what was coming next. The drive to my hotel provided much-needed solitude to process the day's events and formulate a plan. The Uber driver, sensing my mood, kept the radio on low and didn't attempt conversation beyond confirming my destination. I stared out the window at the familiar Minnesota suburbs, passing by my mind, cycling through shock, anger, and finally cold determination. By the time I reached the modest chain hotel near the airport, I had outlined my approach. This wasn't just about reclaiming my bonus. It was about establishing boundaries that should have been set years ago. In my room, I ordered a simple dinner through room service and opened my laptop. First, I created a detailed document recording everything I could remember about the unauthorized transactions. Dates, amounts, and purposes were listed in a spreadsheet, along with notes about my parents' admissions regarding how they had spent the money. I estimated the baby shower alone had cost at least $8,000 based on the catering decorations, photographer, and other elements I had observed. Next, I researched banking regulations regarding unauthorized account access. While I had initially granted them access during my father's medical emergency, I had documented multiple requests for them to remove themselves from the account afterward. Their continued use of the account for non-emergency expenses without my consent constituted a clear violation of the access terms. I took screenshots of text messages and emails where I had explicitly asked them to remove their access. I also documented the specific times I had called to remind them, noting dates and the excuses they had provided for not complying. This careful documentation would be crucial if they attempted to claim I had approved the expenditures. At 11:30 that night, I called the emergency banking support line for my financial institution. The representative listened carefully as I explained the situation. "I need to secure my accounts immediately," I told her. "I previously authorized my parents as emergency contacts on my checking account during a family medical situation, but they have since used that access to make unauthorized withdrawals totaling over $15,000. The representative, professional, and non-judgmental, walked me through the immediate security options. First, we changed all passwords and security questions for my online banking access. Next, we added two-factor authentication requiring approval through my personal cell phone for any transactions over $100. Most importantly, we froze the compromised checking account to prevent any further withdrawals while the investigation proceeded. "I also want to dispute several transactions from the past 2 weeks," I said, referring to my spreadsheet. "I can provide evidence that these were made without my authorization." She created a case number for the disputed transactions and explained the investigation process. While the bank reviewed my claim, I would need to open a new account where I could transfer any remaining funds from the compromised account once it was unfrozen. After setting up the new account with enhanced security features that only I could access, I methodically documented each step I had taken, including the case number and the name of every bank representative I spoke with. The entire process took nearly 2 hours, but by 1:30 in the morning, I had secured my finances and initiated the process to recover the unauthorized withdrawals. The final step was the hardest emotionally. I drafted a formal email to my parents, detailing the actions I had taken and why they had been necessary. I kept the language factual and unemotional, stating clearly that their unauthorized use of my accounts constituted financial abuse and that I had initiated proceedings to recover the funds. I explained that all shared accounts had been frozen and that new accounts had been established that they would not have access to under any circumstances. I have provided documentation to my bank, showing that these transactions were made without my consent. I wrote, "The bank will be investigating and reversing these charges. If you have any receipts or documentation for the purchases made with these funds, I suggest you retain them as the vendors may contact you when the charges are reversed." I concluded by stating that we would need to establish clear boundaries regarding my finances moving forward, and that any future relationship would depend on their respect for those boundaries. I didn't send the email immediately, saving it as a draft to review in the morning when I was less emotionally drained. As a precaution, I also contacted a law school friend who specialized in family law, briefly explaining the situation and asking about potential legal implications. She confirmed that I was taking appropriate steps to protect myself financially and recommended documenting any future conversations with my parents about the matter. Family financial issues can get complicated quickly, she warned. Make sure you have everything in writing and don't make any statements that could be construed as having authorized these expenditures. By 2 a.m, physically and emotionally exhausted, I turned off my phone and prepared for bed. The weight of the day's discoveries and the decisive actions I had taken left me feeling both drained and strangely empowered. For the first time in my adult life, I had drawn a clear, non-negotiable line with my family regarding my resources. Though the confrontation ahead would be difficult, I felt a sense of clarity about the path forward. As I drifted towards sleep, I realized that the $15,600, while significant, was ultimately just money. The real value of my actions tonight was in reclaiming my autonomy and establishing that my boundaries deserved respect regardless of family expectations. The property that had truly changed hands tonight wasn't financial. It was the recognition of my right to determine how my resources were used, a right I should never have had to defend against the people who raised me. My phone exploded with notifications the moment I turned it back on at 6 the next morning. 17 missed calls from my parents, 34 text messages ranging from confused to angry to pleading, 5 voicemails each progressively more panicked than the last. I listened to them while packing my overnight bag, my mother's voice transitioning from indignant, "What do you mean? Our cards were declined," at breakfast, to desperate, "Please call us immediately. This is serious," to tearful, "How could you do this to your family?" I had slept surprisingly well, despite the circumstances, waking with renewed clarity about my position. After reviewing the email I had drafted the night before, I made a few minor edits to ensure the tone remained factual rather than accusatory. Then hit send. Within minutes, my phone rang with my father's number displayed on the screen. I declined the call and texted instead. "I've sent an email explaining the actions I've taken regarding my accounts. Please read it before calling again. I'm about to board a flight and will not be available by phone until this afternoon." This wasn't entirely true. My flight wasn't for another 3 hours, but I needed time to prepare myself emotionally for the conversation that would inevitably follow. I checked out of the hotel and took a shuttle to the airport, where I found a quiet corner in a coffee shop to collect my thoughts. By 9, a new email appeared from my mother. The subject line reading, "This is an emergency." The body contained a single paragraph. "Your father and I are stranded at Perkins with no way to pay for breakfast. The baby shower vendors are calling because their final payments were declined. Emily is in tears because the nursery furniture delivery was canceled. How could you do this to us without warning? This is cruel and unnecessary. Call us immediately." I took a deep breath and composed a brief, clear response. "The emergency here is that you took over $15,000 from my account without permission. I've initiated the process to recover those funds. The vendor's issues are a result of your unauthorized spending, not my protection of my own finances. I suggest you use your own credit cards or checking accounts to cover these expenses." Within minutes, my sister Emily texted, "What's going on? Mom and Dad are freaking out about accounts being frozen. They say you're punishing me for the baby shower." I called her immediately, wanting to ensure she understood my actions weren't directed at her. "Emily, I'm sorry you're caught in the middle of this," I began when she answered. "Mom and Dad spent my entire promotion bonus without my knowledge or permission. I'm not punishing anyone, just protecting my money from further unauthorized use. but they said you froze. Everything right when the nursery furniture was about to be delivered, she said, her voice small and confused. They said you were jealous of the attention I'm getting. That's not true, I said firmly. I love you and I'm excited about the baby, but Mom and Dad stole from me to pay for that furniture. They had no right to use my bonus that way. They said you gave them access to your accounts, she countered, though with less certainty. For a medical emergency last year, yes, not for buying baby furniture or throwing elaborate parties. I've asked them multiple times to remove themselves from my accounts, and they ignored me. This was the only way to protect what's left of my money. The line went quiet for a moment. I had no idea, she finally said. They told me they had been saving for the baby. If I had known they were using your bonus. This isn't your fault, I assured her. You didn't know, and I'm not angry with you. What happens now, she asked. Mom says the furniture company might sue them if the payment doesn't go through. The bank will reverse the unauthorized charges, I explained. If Mom and Dad want to keep the furniture, they'll need to pay for it themselves. I'm sorry if that affects your nursery plans, but I can't let them take advantage of me like this. After speaking with Emily, I turned my phone to airplane mode and boarded my flight back to Chicago. The 2-hour journey gave me space to reflect on the rapid escalation of events and prepare for what would likely be a difficult few days ahead. When I landed and turned my phone back on, I discovered 7 new voicemails and a flurry of text messages. Most concerning was a message from my building's security desk, informing me that my parents had arrived demanding to be led up to my apartment. I immediately called the front desk. This is Natalie Henderson in apartment 21114. I understand my parents are there. Yes, Miss Henderson, the security guard confirmed. They're quite insistent about needing to speak with you. They say it's a family emergency. It's not an emergency, I replied firmly. I do not want them admitted to the building. If they refuse to leave, please contact the police. Understood, Miss Henderson. My hands shook slightly as I ended the call. The situation had escalated beyond what I had anticipated. My parents had driven over 7 hours from Minnesota to Chicago, apparently leaving immediately after receiving my email. Their willingness to make that journey without warning demonstrated just how seriously they were taking the financial consequences of their actions, if not the violation itself. By the time my taxi reached my apartment building, the security guard informed me that my parents had finally left after he threatened to call law enforcement. They had, however, left a handwritten note that he handed me as I entered the lobby. Natalie, the note read in my mother's distinctive handwriting. We drove all this way to resolve this misunderstanding in person. Your actions have created a crisis for our entire family. The caterer is threatening legal action for the reversed payment. Emily's nursery is now empty. Your father had to borrow money from Uncle Rob just to afford the gas to drive here. Please call us immediately so we can discuss undoing this damage. We're staying at the Holiday Inn, Mom and Dad. Not once in the note did they acknowledge taking my money without permission or express remorse for violating my boundaries. The focus remained entirely on the consequences they were facing rather than the actions that had precipitated them. In my apartment, I finally allowed myself to fully process the emotional impact of the past 24 hours. I had stood up to my parents more decisively than ever before, and the backlash was intense, but not unexpected. Years of enabling their behavior had created a dynamic where they felt entitled to my resources. Breaking that pattern would inevitably be painful for everyone involved. I called my friend Lisa, a colleague at the investment firm who had become a trusted confidant. As I recounted the events of the weekend, her initial shock gave way to supportive indignation. They stole your bonus and then acted like you're the problem for protecting your money. That's gaslighting, pure and simple. She said, You did the right thing, Natalie. Don't let them make you doubt yourself. I don't doubt my decision, I replied. But I didn't expect them to show up in Chicago or for things to get this messy. They're escalating because you're changing the rules of engagement, Lisa observed. They've always counted on you giving in to keep the peace. Now that you're standing firm, they're pulling out all the stops to regain control. After speaking with Lisa, I contacted the therapist I had been seeing sporadically since moving to Chicago of Dr. Marquez agreed to a virtual emergency session that evening, during which she helped me process my feelings and prepare for potential confrontations in the coming days. What you're describing is a classic family system disruption, she explained. You've changed the established dynamic by setting a firm boundary, and the entire system is responding with resistance. This is painful but necessary if you want healthier relationships moving forward. By Monday morning, my bank had confirmed that 16 separate transactions to various vendors had been flagged for investigation. The process of reversing these charges would take 7 to 10 business days, during which time my parents would likely continue pressuring me to withdraw my claims. I drafted a clear, professional email to my supervisor explaining that I was dealing with a family financial situation that might require some flexibility in my schedule over the coming week. Without sharing excessive details, I noted that I might need to take personal calls during the day, and potentially 1 or 2 personal days, if legal matters arose. As I prepared for the work week ahead, I felt a strange mix of exhaustion and resolve. The property that had changed hands wasn't just financial anymore. It was the power dynamic in my family, shifting from their control to a more balanced relationship, where my boundaries would need to be respected. The road ahead would be difficult, but for the first time in my adult life, I felt fully in control of my relationship with my parents. Whatever happened next would be on my terms, not theirs. 5 days after freezing my accounts, I sat in a private room at a neutral location, a mediation center in downtown Chicago. My parents sat across the table, looking simultaneously angry and deflated. Emily and her husband James had driven down from Minnesota to join us. After Emily had insisted on being present for what she called fixing our broken family, a professional mediator, Miss Winters, whom I had hired at my own expense, completed our group. The preceding days had been a storm of escalating accusations and attempts at emotional manipulation. My parents had remained in Chicago, sending daily emails and messages, alternating between guilt trips. Emily cried herself to sleep last night, worrying about the baby's room and threats. The caterer's lawyer will be contacting you directly about the reversed payment. They had attempted to contact my supervisor at work, though thankfully our firm's strict privacy policies had prevented them from reaching him. Through it all, I had maintained my position, responding only with brief factual statements, reiterating that the funds had been taken without my permission, and that the bank's investigation would proceed regardless of their pressure tactics. By Wednesday, my bank had confirmed that all 16 disputed transactions would be reversed, with funds returning to my new secure account within 5 business days. Now, seated in the calm, neutral space of the mediation center, the emotional temperature had cooled somewhat. My parents looked tired, the fight partially drained from them by days of unsuccessful attempts to regain control of the situation. Miss Winters began by establishing ground rules for our discussion. We're here to address a serious breakdown in family communication and boundaries, she explained. Each person will have uninterrupted time to share their perspective. Our goal is understanding and resolution, not assigning blame. When my turn came to speak, I had a prepared statement that I had refined with Dr. Marquez's help. Last year, during Dad's health crisis, I granted temporary access to my checking account for emergency expenses. I began my voice steady despite my racing heart. After the crisis passed, I asked multiple times for that access to be removed. Instead of respecting that boundary, you used that access to spend my entire promotion bonus, $15,600, without my knowledge or consent. You spent it on a baby shower I wasn't told about until I arrived nursery furniture. I never agreed to purchase and other expenses related to Emily's pregnancy. I looked directly at my parents. This wasn't an emergency. It wasn't a misunderstanding. It was a deliberate decision to use my money without asking me. That's financial abuse, and it reflects a pattern of boundary violations that has existed throughout my adult life. My father shifted uncomfortably in his seat. That's a very harsh characterization of what happened, he said, his voice tight. We've always supported you, paid for your education. I paid for my education through scholarships and jobs, I corrected him. And supporting me as a child doesn't give you the right to take my money as an adult. My mother interjected. We had access to that account. We thought it was a shared family resource. I sent 7 emails and called 9 times asking you to remove yourselves from that account, I replied, pulling out printed copies of the emails. Here are the dates and times. Each time you had an excuse for why you couldn't do it yet. Miss Winters gently redirected the conversation. Karen and Thomas, can you help me understand why you felt it was appropriate to use Natalie's bonus for these expenses? My father cleared his throat. Family resources should support family needs. Emily is starting a family, and we wanted to make that special. Natalie has her career and makes good money. We didn't think she would miss it with her salary. Did you consider asking Natalie if she wanted to contribute to these expenses? Miss Winters asked. An uncomfortable silence followed. Finally, my mother spoke. We knew she would say no. She's always been careful with money, too careful sometimes. You mean responsible? I said quietly. I'm responsible with my money because I watched our family struggle financially my entire childhood, while you made impulsive purchases we couldn't afford. Emily, who had been listening, intently spoke up. I had no idea any of this was happening. Mom and Dad told me they had been saving for the baby. If I had known they were using Natalie's bonus without asking, we wanted to surprise everyone, my mother insisted. We wanted it to be special at my expense, I added. Literally. James, Emily's husband, who had remained quiet until now, addressed my parents directly. Karen, Thomas, Emily, and I are financially stable. We didn't need an elaborate baby shower or expensive furniture. We would have been happy with something simple that didn't put this kind of strain on the family. My father's demeanor finally began to shift from defensive to reflective. We may have gotten carried away with the planning, he admitted reluctantly. But your reaction, Natalie, freezing accounts and reversing charges without warning, created a crisis for everyone. The crisis was created when you took $15,000 without permission, I countered. My actions were to protect what was left of my money and recover what was taken. As the mediation continued, a pattern emerged in my parents' thinking. They genuinely could not understand why I considered their actions theft, rather than family support. In their worldview, family resources were communal, with parents having authority to direct those resources regardless of whose name was on the account. The breakthrough came not through my arguments, but through Emily's tears. 2 hours into the session, after hearing the full extent of the financial and boundary violations, she turned to our parents. You've always treated Natalie differently, she said, her voice breaking. You've always expected her to take care of things, to be the responsible one, while I got the support and celebrations. I never saw it clearly until now, but it's not fair. And taking her money without asking wasn't just unfair, it was wrong. My father's rigid posture finally softened. We wanted to give you the perfect start to motherhood, he said to Emily. We got caught up in that vision and made poor choices about how to fund it. That's still not an apology to Natalie, Emily pointed out. After a long moment, my father turned to me. I'm sorry we used your money without permission. He said the words clearly difficult for him. We should have asked. My mother remained silent until Miss Winters gently prompted her. Karen, do you have anything to add? I still think family should support family, she began defensively, then paused as she saw Emily's expression fall. But we should have talked to you first, Natalie. Taking the money the way we did was wrong. It wasn't a perfect acknowledgement of the boundary violation, but it was a start. With Miss Winters' guidance, we established a framework for moving forward. My parents would attend financial counseling to address their long-standing issues with money management and boundaries. They agreed in writing to never access any of my financial accounts again under any circumstances, and we established clear communication protocols for future family financial discussions. Most importantly, they acknowledged that the reverse charges were a consequence of their actions, not mine, and agreed to handle any fallout with vendors without involving me further. As we prepared to leave the mediation center, Emily hugged me tightly. I'm so sorry this happened, she whispered. I never wanted my baby to come between us. This isn't about the baby, I assured her. This is about boundaries that should have been established long ago. And honestly, I'm glad it came to a head now before patterns were established that would affect my relationship with my niece or nephew. She nodded, wiping away tears. James and I want you to be part of the baby's life on your terms. No expectations about financial contributions or anything else, just whatever role you want as an aunt. It was the first moment since the baby shower that I felt genuine hope for my family relationships moving forward. The confrontation had been painful, but necessary, clearing the air of decades of unspoken expectations and resentments. As my parents left with Emily and James, my father paused at the door. We're going to do better, Natalie, he said, quietly, It might take some time to understand all of this completely, but we're going to try. I nodded, not quite ready to offer forgiveness, but acknowledging his effort. That's all I'm asking for. Walking back to my apartment alone, I felt lighter than I had in years. The property that had changed wasn't just my money or the power dynamic in my family. It was my own sense of worth and the knowledge that I deserved to have my boundaries respected, even by the people who raised me. 6 months have passed since the confrontation that transformed my family dynamics. My niece Lily was born 3 weeks after our mediation session. A healthy 7lb6 Oz baby with Emily's nose and James's calm temperament. I was in the waiting room during her birth, having chosen to be present without being in the delivery room itself, a boundary my sister now understood and respected. The journey toward healing our family relationships has been neither quick nor linear. There have been setbacks and moments of tension, particularly in the early weeks after our confrontation. My parents initially struggled with the new boundaries, occasionally slipping into old patterns of expectation or subtle guilt trips. Each time I calmly restated my position and, if necessary, temporarily limited contact until they could respect my terms. The financial consequences of their actions provided a natural reinforcement of the new boundaries. The reverse charges led to awkward conversations with vendors and some damaged social relationships in their community. The nursery furniture was eventually repurchased at a discount through Emily and James's own funds, supplemented by a genuine gift I chose to give them for the baby. The scaled-back furniture set better suited their actual needs rather than my parents' grandeur visions. My parents followed through on their commitment to financial counseling, attending weekly sessions with a therapist specializing in financial behavior. According to Emily, who speaks with them more frequently than I do, they've begun to recognize patterns from their own upbringings that contributed to their problematic relationship with money and boundaries. My father particularly has developed new insight into how his parents' Depression-era mentality created both excessive frugality in some areas and compensatory splurging in others. My own therapeutic journey has deepened as well. Working with Dr. Marquez, I've explored how being parentified as a child, forced to understand and worry about adult financial matters, shaped my approach to money and relationships. I've learned to recognize the hypervigilance I developed around financial security, and the difficulty I have in allowing others to contribute to shared expenses, always fearing hidden costs or obligations. The most surprising development has been my relationship with Emily. Freed from our parents' comparative dynamic that always cast me as the responsible worker and her as the socially successful daughter, we've discovered a more authentic connection as adults. She calls me for advice about returning to her teaching career after maternity leave, while I seek her perspective on social situations that have always been her strength. When I visit Minnesota now, I often stay at her house, rather than our parents' home, building a relationship with baby Lily on my own terms. Professionally, the clarity and confidence I gained from standing firm on my boundaries has translated into greater assertiveness at work. 3 months ago, I successfully negotiated a project leadership role that I might previously have hesitated to pursue, fearing it would create conflict with colleagues. My ability to clearly state my qualifications without apology or excessive justification impressed senior management, resulting in additional responsibilities and compensation. The financial security I fought to protect has grown through careful planning. The recovered bonus combined with my increased salary has allowed me to make a down payment on a small but well-located condo in Chicago. I closed on the property last month, a milestone I celebrated by hosting a small housewarming gathering with local friends, including Lisa, who has become an even closer confidant through this experience. I've also found unexpected purpose in sharing what I've learned about financial boundaries. After mentioning my experience in a women's professional development group at work, I was asked to create a lunch and learn presentation on financial independence and boundary setting. The response was overwhelming, with many attendees sharing similar experiences of family financial entanglements. I've since developed this into a more comprehensive workshop that I've presented at 3 community centers in Chicago. My relationship with my parents continues to evolve gradually. We speak twice monthly by phone, with conversations that remain somewhat surface level, but are no longer fraught with tension. I visited them briefly during my last trip to Minnesota, a day visit that ended before old patterns could reemerge. My mother has begun asking permission before making suggestions about my life or career. A small but significant change that acknowledges my autonomy. The most profound change, however, has been internal. The young girl who grew up watching bill collectors call and feeling responsible for family financial stability has been replaced by a woman who understands that caring for others does not require sacrificing her own boundaries. I've learned that true family support is mutual and consensual, not extracted through guilt or obligation. Last week, as I rocked baby Lily in the nursery, furnished with items chosen through genuine care rather than compulsion, Emily asked me what I thought our parents had learned from everything that happened. I think they're learning that love and respect have to go together, I replied, after considering the question. That supporting family means honoring each person's right to make their own choices, not just doing what you think is best for them. That's what I want for Lily, Emily said, watching her daughter drift towards sleep in my arms, to know she's loved unconditionally, but also respected as her own person. Then you've already learned the most important lesson from all of this, I told her. As I reflect on the journey from that shocking moment at the small family dinner to where I stand today, I realize that the property that changed most fundamentally was not financial. It was the recognition of my inherent worth and right to self-determination, a property no one can take without my consent. Have you ever had to establish difficult boundaries with family members who didn't respect your financial independence? How did you handle that conversation, and what was the outcome? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please like and subscribe to hear more about navigating complicated family dynamics and building healthy boundaries. Thank you for listening to my journey, and remember that protecting your own well-being isn't selfish. It's necessary for authentic relationships to flourish.